وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. جزاك الله خير. May Allah Azza wa Jalla have mercy on all of you, and I pray that you have a happy Eid, a blessed Eid. Allahumma ameen. May Allah accept all your righteous deeds. Tonight, briefly, we're going to read through a book that we had previously read, studied, taught, if I'm not mistaken, more than once. And that is Ahkam al-Eidain fi Sunnat al-Mutahhara. Rulings of the two Eids, as is mentioned, legislated, laid down in the authentic, pure Sunnah by the late Sheikh Ali al-Halabi. May Allah have mercy on him and reward him for all that he did for Islam and Muslims, and for knowledge and his people, his tulab, his ulama. Ameen. So we're going to go to the index, page number 95 in the PDF. Page number 5, the author says, Al-Muqaddimah, introduction. Page 9, Mu'allafatun Hawla al-Eidain, books, authored works about the Eids, meaning referring you or allowing you to refer to other works, things that have been written on the rulings, wisdoms of the two Eids, Al-Adha and Al-Fitr. And this obviously is in Arabic, and of course in the English language there are different books that are available as well, whether they're translations or whether they're domestic books written in English, with regards to what to do, how to do, when to do, why to do, concerning the two Eids. Next chapter he says, Al-Eid. What is the Eid? What does it mean? What does it constitute or necessitate? The word, the term. Next chapter he says, Rahmatullahi lil-Ummati al-Muhammadiyyati bil-Eidain. He says, Allah's mercy upon this nation by legislating the Eid. Next chapter, Al-Idhnu bi Sama' al-Dufi min al-Juwaydiyat. The allowance and the permission for a Muslim to play a duf, a type of drum, with regards to it coming from certain people. Let's say, for example, young girls. Young innocent girls playing the duf. That's what it says here. The next chapter he says, At-Tajammulu fil Eid, dressing up, beautifying yourself, adorning yourself for the Eid. Next chapter, Al-Khuruju ila Musalla, walking to the place of prayer. Outside, inside the Musalla, and obviously originally meaning the outside area. Next chapter, Al-Dhahabu wal-Iyad ila Musalla, going and returning from the Eid, meaning what are the sunnah acts? How should you go to the Eid? Walking, riding? When should you leave? Should you go early? When you come back, should you ride? Should you walk? Should you take another route, another path? That's been explained. The next point he says, At-Takbiru fil Eidain, making the takbirs, saying Allahu Akbar. How do you say them? After the 5 daily prayers, is that valid? Is that authentic? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad wa Sayyidina Muhammad. Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, wa la ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, kathir, etc., etc., etc. What is the fiqh of the takbir? And then he says, women, are they allowed to raise their voices, etc., etc. Then he says, Mata ya'kulu fil Eidaini. When is it preferred? When is it allowed for one to eat during the two Eids? After Fajr, before you go, after you go? Should you save your stomach for your sacrifice, etc.? Al-Ghusnu qabla al-Eid, washing up, taking a ritual bath. Is it the sunnah to take a bath before the Eid, like Jumu'ah? Is there dalil to state that? Is the qiyas? Is it mandatory? Etc. هل يصلى قبل صلاة العيد أو بعدها? Is the prayer to be made? Is there recommended prayer, voluntary prayer to be made before or after the Eid? Meaning the sunnah of Eid. Is there a sunnah for Eid? Now this is a good question for us all. If the Eid prayer is going to be held inside of the masjid, what should you do, Khalid? Pray before you sit down or just sit down? Sit down, don't pray.
No, I changed my mind.
Huh?
I changed my mind.
Stand into the salah.
I changed my mind.
Can't lose with that one, huh? Tayyib. Anybody else? What should you do?
Pray.
Pray. How much? How many rakahs? 2?
Yeah.
What do you say?
I will pray too.
You pray 2?
Yeah.
Okay. Did the Prophet ﷺ ever pray before the Eid? Is it reported that he prayed? He made 2 rakahs before Eid? It's not reported, right? So how can you say pray before you sit down?
This is not related to the Eid.
Because it's not related to Eid. What is the prayer for then? Tahiyyatu Rabbil Masjid. MashaAllah. Ah, he said what? Obi-Wan has taught you well. Tayyib. So therefore, this is one of the problems with prayer, the Eid prayer in the Musalla, in the masjid. Right? And this is one of the wisdoms why it's mentioned that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ never made 2 rak'ah before the Eid, because he was outside. All right. You understand how it works? How the fiqh issues work? The ins and the outs, big and small, up and down, high and low. The next chapter, the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, he says, page number 96 in the PDF, Hukmu Salat al-Eidain. What are the rulings on making the Eid prayers? Or the ruling, meaning is it mandatory? Do you have to go? If a woman's menstruating, does she have to go? If a woman doesn't have a mahram to go outside, does she have to go? If a man is a little tired, does he have to go? If you're going to lose money at work, do you have to go? If you have to walk, you have no cab fare, do you have to go? Or is it just recommended to make the Eid prayers? Or is it an obligation upon the community at large? Fard kifaya. Fard ayn, fard kifaya, sunnah mu'akkada, wala sunnah. You understand this? The different madahib of the ulama. Next chapter he says, Waqtu salat al-Eid. When is the Eid prayer to be made? The earliest and the latest. When is the earliest we can make it? And when is the latest? Next chapter he says, La adana wa la iqamata. Neither adhan or iqamah for the Eid. No call whatsoever. Next chapter the author says, Sifatu salat al-Eid. The description of the Eid prayer. Did the Prophet ﷺ raise his hands for every takbirah? How many takbirat did he make? 7, 5? Did he place his hands on his chest afterwards? What surahs did he recite? Did he recite out loud? Was it long? Was it short? Etc. The description of the Prophet's Eid prayer. Afterwards it says, Al-khutbatu ba'da salah. The sermon should be after the prayer. The exact opposite of Jumu'ah. And does a person have to listen to the khutbah, or can they go and enjoy their family or slaughter, etc.? He says, Al-khutbatu wa takhyiru bi huduriha. That's the next chapter. Is you having the option of sitting or leading. Next chapter he says, Ijtima'u al-jum'ati wal-Eid. What happens when the Eid and Jum'ah fall on the same day? Are you required to make Eid and Jum'ah? Can you just make Eid without Jum'ah? If you make Eid, do you have to make Dhuhr without Jum'ah, etc.? Afterwards, he says, Ahkam al-Udhiyah. Rulings of Udhiyah. What animals you're allowed to slaughter? Can you slaughter an alpaca, a llama, a wanako, a buffalo, a water buffalo, a yak, an ostrich, an emu, a pheasant? A big bird, expensive bird, a turkey. It's a reality. Many people, they have different animals. Say, we don't have no cows, we don't have any sheep, we don't have goat. In my country, we have llamas. We eat from them, we take their milk, we take their meat, we use their fur, etc. What animals are allowed to be sacrificed? What are the ages of those animals? What are the descriptions of those animals? If you go to the slaughterhouse or the farm, if there's something slightly wrong with the animal, doesn't mean you can't offer it at all. It has to be absolutely perfect, etc. Are you allowed to pay the butcher? Etc. Next chapter, he says, Munkaratul Eid. Foul acts of the Eid. Munkarat. Innovations, people make up. Sins. Al-ikhtilat, al-tabarruj. The reckless, impermissible, unlawful mixing between sexes. Hugging and kissing cousins, family, friends, brothers-in-law, sisters-in-law. Not covering properly. And obviously that's a broken record that's been playing and screeching for how many years now, Khalid? And it's matching another. That's a can't sample that one. Maybe you can. Tayyib. Allah musta'an. That's unfortunate. Next one he says, Hal hada hul Eid. Chapter heading says, is this the Eid? Next chapter, Al-Khatimah, conclusion, and then the index. So inshallah ta'ala, you can go back to those playlists, as we said. You can go back to those playlists now, and you can find the full detailed discussion of the Eid from A to Z, years ago. What we'll read tonight briefly is, on page number 71, he says, Ahkam al-Udhiyah. Ahkam al-Udhiyah. He says, هناك أحكام متعلقة بالأضاحي يجدر بالمسلم أن يعرفها ليكون على علم في عبادته وعلى بينة من أمره ألخصها بما يأتي ذكره إن شاء الله. There are many rulings, do's and don'ts pertaining to Udhiyah. And he says, يجدر is worthy for a Muslim to know them. A Muslim should know them. And he should be upon knowledge when he performs worship. He should be clear, he should be confident, he shouldn't be guessing and doubtful. And just think about animals, right? You go to the farm. Animals that are leaders, animals that are followers. The animals being pulled and dragged. Right? You put a carrot, in front of the donkey, whatever city the donkey belongs to, in the UK or America, wherever the donkey is. You put a carrot in front of the donkey, The donkey just does what? Follows. So that's the similitude of the Muslim, unfortunately, who has no knowledge whatsoever. He has to follow. Come with me, you do it this way. And then another scholar says, no, you do it that way. And then the 30 imam says, no, you do it my way. And the 50 imam says, let's make wudu on the animal. Let's turn it towards the qibla. Let's make 2 rak'ah with the what? With the animal. Then another person says, let's recite Surah Baqarah in the animal's ear. And the 5th, you can't use this type of blade. It can't be this, it can't be that. You have to cut this, you can't, the esophagus, etc., etc., etc. If you don't have the basic knowledge, if you don't have the basic awareness, then you're at the mercy of the next man. And just think about that comparison. Think about that and think about the actual what? The animal itself. And what separates man from animal. It's supposed to be brains. Aql. Man from animal, right? Unfortunately. Moving forward. He says, I'll try my best to summarize these points in the following. Number 1. أولا كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يضحي بكبشين وكان ينحرهما بعد صلاة العيد وأخبر صلى الله عليه وسلم أن من ذبح قبل الصلاة فليس من النسك في شيء وإنما هو لحم قدمه لأهله. Number 1, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم used to slaughter himself 2 sheep. And that's interesting. Whereas the scholars of Islam say the best animal to sacrifice is the camel, then the cow or the heifer, then the sheep or the goat. But the Prophet ﷺ only did what? Kabshani, what? You forgot, Samini, Emlahini, stepping in black, walking in black, the ring, we went over all of this, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, he slaughtered those 2 sheep, and he would do it after the Eid. The author says, and the Messenger of Allah has informed us, is that the one who slaughters his animal before the Eid prayer has not offered udhiyah and is not qurbani. Rather, it's nothing more than just meat. Lamb chops, lamb shoulder, lamb shank, halas. It isn't worship. It isn't a specific worship. So be careful if you send your money overseas. Be mindful of the time zone. Send your cow to Vietnam or to Ghana or wherever you choose to send it. You have to make sure that they slaughter it at the proper time. Before their Eid prayer or before your Eid prayer. Definitely out, huh?
It's my kurban. Right?
طيب وهكذا. Move forward. ثانيا وكان صلى الله عليه وسلم يأمر أصحابه أن يذبحوا الجذع من الضأن والثني مما سواه. And the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, with regards to sheep, he would command for the people to slaughter a jadha. A jadha, huh? And he would command the people outside of the sheep a dhan. What's meant by these words and these terms? He says here in the footnotes, al-jadha'atu ila akhirihi wasfun li sinnin mu'ayyan wa الآن فمن الضأن ما أكمل سنتين وهو قول الجمهور وقيل دونها ثم اختلف في تقديره فقيل 8 وقيل 10 والثني من الإبل ما استكمل 5 سنين ومن البقر والمعز ما استكمل 2 وطعن في الثالثة. He says, as far as the jadha, then that is the sheep, and obviously lamb, to give or take the words, the term, the sex of the animal. That can become a technicality, right? But we're just talking about that one species, not goat or goats, not yet. He says that is the animal, according to most of the scholars of Islam, that is at least 1 year old. It's going on 2.
2 teeth up front, 2 teeth.
Go with the age. If you're good enough to look at the teeth, then mashallah. And in most cases, you're going to ask the one who's selling. And if you have the ability to look at the teeth and other signs, then that's even what? That's even better. Knowledge. What's important is it has to be 1 year according to most of the scholars of the Arabic language. And others, they say dunah. They can be less than a year. Well, there's 10 months, 8 months, and some may even say 6 months. And right doing this, so the safest thing is to slaughter the sheep that's at least what? A year old. As far as the thani, then that's done with sheep. You can't go lower than a year or 6, that age limit. As far as goat, camels, and cows, then it has to be what? Thani. And the thani and camels is the camel that's at least 5 years old. The cow or the heifer has to be at least what? 2. And the goat have to be 2 as well. That's with regards to those animals. Khayran inshallah, moving forward. He then says, عن مجاشع ابن مسعود رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن الجذع من الضأن يوفي مما يوفي. We'll skip the detail for now because of the time. ثالثا ويجوز تأخير الذبح إلى اليوم الثاني والثالث بعد العيد لما ثبت عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال كل أيام التشريق ذبح. You do not have to slaughter on the day of the Eid. Rather, you can slaughter 1, 2, or 3 days after the Eid, as long as it's during one of the days of Tashriq. And obviously this Eid will have how many days? 4. 4 days. The 10th day and 3 additional days. It is all lawful for you to slaughter. قال ابن القيم هذا مذهب أحمد ومالك وأبي حنيفة رحمهم الله. قال أحمد وهو قول غير واحد من أصحاب محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. وذكر الأثرم عن ابن عمر عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهم إلى أن قال. رابعا ومن هديه صلى الله عليه وسلم أن من أراد التضحية ودخول أول يوم من أيام العشر من ذي الحجة فلا يأخذ من شعره وبشره شيئا. ثبت النهي عن ذلك. And it speaks about not trimming your hair, not trimming your fingernails once a good hijjah comes in, and that's done already, obviously. Move forward. Next point, he says.
So we can start with 4 days. Yomal.
Yes. as long as it's within the days of Tashriq. The day of the Eid, 3 after. Moving forward, the author states, rahimahullah, خامسا وكان صلى الله عليه وسلم يختار الأضحية سليمة من العيوب وكان يستحسنها ونهى أن يضحى بمقطوعة الأذن مكسورة القرن وأمر بالنظر إلى سلامة الأضحية وأن لا يضحي بعوراء ولا مقابلة ولا مدابرة ولا شرقاء ولا خرقاء. ثبت النهي عن هذا كله. And the Messenger of Allah عليه الصلاة والسلام, he forbade the offering of a damaged animal, a beat up animal, a chipped up animal, an animal that's been through wars and is sick, is alive. You can't offer that type of animal in general. And there are specific uyub, specific things that the animal must be free from, such as its ear being cut or trimmed, its tail being cut, and things like this. Moving forward, what's the rule on having a tag in the animal's ear? Is that included in that? You say no. We're talking about the sunnah, brother. Listen carefully. He says here, maqtu'atul udhun. The animal whose ear is what? No, cut off. That's number one. It's what? Cut off. It's missing an ear. Move forward. He says, wala muqabila. In the footnotes, he says, التي قطع مقدم أذنها. Is the animal that the front part of the ear is missing. والمدابرة هي التي قطع مؤخر أذنها. Is the back part of the ear is missing. والشرقاء هي التي شقت أذنها. The sharqa is the animal whose ear is what? Cleft, slit, right? والخرقة هي التي خرقت أذنها. And the kharqa is the animal that has a hole in its what? In its ear. So for argument's sake, regardless of the ruling of the need, disease, etc., in general, the animal that has the tag in his ear is to an extent. To a what? To an extent. Linguistically, his ear is pierced. His ear is cut. To a what? To an extent. Obviously, if there's a need, that's the only thing that you have. You get the point I'm trying to make. Some of the complexities of the modern dunya. وأما الكبش الموجود فيجوز التضحية به لما ورد مثله عنه صلى الله عليه وسلم فيما رواه أبو يعلى والبيهقي بسند حسن والهيثمي إلى آخره. إيش معنى الموجود؟ اللهم المستعان. طيب, can you slaughter a castrated animal? An animal that's been castrated. You say no. Author says yes. And the reason why you can, he says there's a specific hadith that proves that. سادسا وكان صلى الله عليه وسلم يضحي بالمصلى. The Messenger of Allah used to offer his sacrifice in and at the what? The musalla. Not the farm, not the factory, at the musalla. Once again, the complexities of life. You can't, this is illegal, this is a rule, too many people, blood, etc. But that is the sunnah. سابعا وكان من هديه صلى الله عليه وسلم أن الشاة تجزي عن الرجل وعن أهل بيته ولو كثر عددهم كما قال عطاء بن يسار سألت أبا أيوب الأنصاري إلى آخره. Seventh point is that one sheep is enough for an entire household. ولو كثر, even if it's 10 people in the house, 15 people, you have 20 kids, you have stepchildren, you have your grandma, your aunt, your uncle, this one, that one, they're all in your household that you're looking after, brother, sister, etc., then that is enough. As far as if you have more than one household, then another animal is needed. ثامنا ويستحب التكبير والتسمية عند الذبح لما ثبت عن أنس أنه قال ضحى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بكبشين أملحين أقرنين ذبحهما بيده وسمى وكبر ووضع رجله على صفاحهما. It's recommended to make the takbir and the tasmiyah at the time of slaughter. Do you have to say Bismillah? Is it a condition? Is it recommended? That's a technical fiqh issue. We've explained in detail. Tasa, number 9. وأفضل الأضحية ما كانت كبشا أقرن فحلا أبيض يخالطه سواد حول عينيه وفي قوائمه إذ هذا هو الوصف الذي استحبه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وضحى به. The author states the best udhiyah to make is a sheep. And the sheep, he said, aqra, should be horned, whether it's a ram or not. Different species of animals. Some animals have horns and they're not considered to be rams. So it should have horns. Fahla, and it should be male. It says male. Abyadu, it should be white. Yukhalituhu sawad, mixed with black. Black around the what? The eyes. Remember you were a little kid? Little dog you would see with the what?
Spot.
Nah, whack at that, right? He says what? Black around his eyes and black in his legs. And that's the description of the Prophet ﷺ's animal. So the author states that that's the best thing to offer, better than a bigger, beefier animal. Wallahu ta'ala. عاشرا ويستحب أن يباشر المسلم أضحيته بنفسه وإن أناب غيره في ذبحها جاز ذلك بلا حرج. It's best to do it yourself by hand. Not to delegate someone, not to donate for someone else to do, but it's best for you to do it with your hand. Even though it's permissible and lawful to delegate someone else. But you yourself should what? Do it. 11 ويستحب لأهل البيت الذين ضحوا أن يأكل منها أو يأكلوا منها وأن يهدوا منها وأن يتصدقوا منها ويجوز لهم أن يدخروا يقول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كلوا ودخروا وتصدقوا. It's recommended for the household to eat from it, to give some in charity, and to give some as a gift. 12. Number 12. تجزي البدنة عن 7 ومثلها البقرة. 1 camel would be enough for, he says, 7. 7 households can share, 7 men can share that type of animal. 13. ولا يعطى الجازر أجرة عمله من الأضحية. The butcher should not be paid. The one who slaughters the animal should not be paid. He should not be given something for his sacrifice. Now, how does that work now? You go to the slaughterhouse. What are you paying for? The animal? The butchering service? Are you paying him to slaughter it for you? Or is it someone who's just a free butcher? Moving forward.
It's the opposite. Butcher prices are increased.
They
increase their prices.
And I was watching a video the other day. They were talking about the new Hajj system, right? And this one guy, he was going crazy. How could they do this? It's horrible. It's terrible. The Saudis, they messed up everything. It's stuck for the law 3 weeks before Hajj, etc. He was just going crazy, ballistic. So me, as a YouTuber, I went to the comments. Let's keep it real. Everybody's what? Reading the comments, right? For one reason or another. You look for education, entertainment, people are reading the what? They're reading the comments. So I started reading through the comments. People are agreeing with them. Then, the tide turned. Getting rid of those corrupt, blood-sucking Hajj companies was the best thing that they've ever done. Cutting out the middleman. It's cheaper for the Haji. It's better for, etc., etc. You get the point I'm trying to make? And it all depends on what? How you look at it. The perspective. One man's trash, another man's treasure. Right? So, people getting mad and upset of how things used to be, how things are now. It depends on how you look at it. Moving forward. Rabi Ashar, number 14. من عجز عن الأضحية من المسلمين ناله أجر المضحين من أمة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. وذلك لأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال عند ذبحه لأحد الكبشين اللهم هذا عني وعمن لم يضحي من أمتي. He says those who wish to make udhiyah but they can't, they don't have the ability, they will receive the reward of the actual sacrifice. Whereas the Prophet ﷺ, he slaughtered those 2 animals, one was for himself and one was for the Muslims who don't have the ability to do so. خامس عشر, number 15. قال ابن قدامة في المغني وقد ضحى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم والخلفاء الراشدون بعده ولو علموا أن الصدقة أفضل لعدلوا إليها ولأن إثار الصدقة على الأضحية يفضي إلى ترك سنة سنها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. The last point that he mentions is what Ibn Qudama, a great scholar of the past, said, is that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made udhiyah and the Khulafa Rashidun, they all made udhiyah, right? And if it was best to give charity the cost of the udhiyah, they would have done so. And if you abolish the animal and abolish the sacrifice and say just pay money, that would lead to the removal of that sunnah act. Stop, pause the tape. 2022. How many people are saying, oh, this no longer exists? We have this now. Islam is spread through dollars. So there's no longer a need for that anymore. Right? Just think about the whole entire vegan movement, PETA movement. Back in the day, the hunter-gatherers, our crude, uneducated ancestors, they had to what? They had to hunt. They needed meat. They needed protein. They needed to stay warm. They needed those skins. As far as now, we have plastic, we have rubber, we have synthetic leather, we have plant-based foods. There's no need for what? For meat. You can go to the supermarket and you get your protein any time of the year. Beans, this, that, there's no need for it. And just think about so many other things with regards to people who say about polygyny. Perfect example. Oh no, that was in the time of wars. That was when there were orphan girls. There's no need for that in 2022. How many young people aren't married? There's no need for a man to have more than one wife. And think about how many other examples people, they want to switch and exchange the sunnah for what they deem and what they feel is more suitable in 2022. There are 50 examples of it. And even if that was correct for argument's sake, he mentions that it would lead to what? Doing away with the Sunnah Act. So therefore, instead of slaughtering an animal, giving the meat, eating the meat, I can take the $500 and give it in charity. And no doubt, the $500 is better for the poor Muslim than some meat. What can the Muslim do if he doesn't have electricity? If he doesn't have gas, running water, he needs money more than meat. So for argument's sake, you give him the money, you don't slaughter. Next year, the year after, what happens to the udhiyah is what? It's done. And the same applies to this, that act. And before you know it, these shayateen, they'll get their way while they live in that. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, Islam, may Allah protect and prevent, would have been reformed. No doubt about that. And what used to be is no longer. And our children and grandchildren, they'll sit around the campfire, the fireplace, and say, man, you remember when Abby used to do that? You remember when the Muslims what? Used to do this? Yeah, those were the good old golden days, which are long gone. And as they say, today you give up a sheep, and tomorrow you give up your flock. Just think about that. This is unnecessary. This was only intended for kada. This was kada. This is kada. Oh no, this was kada. This is the Middle East. And the next thing you know, your deen is what? Wiped away. So that's food for thought. May Allah protect us from that. And the Quran clearly tells us that the kuffar and the mushrikun, they wish to substitute and exchange Allah's words. And they want to put out Allah's light. Why the other than that? May Allah protect us from that. We'll stop here tonight. We'll see if there's any time for questions. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Can you still slaughter buffalo?
Can you slaughter a buffalo? Buffalo is very similar to a cow. Its size, its description, its use, and the things that you get from it. And many ulama of Islam, they have allowed, they call it a jamus. So that's a similar animal, a yak, a water buffalo. It's like a cow. Wallahu a'lam.
For this Eid, is it 3 days of celebration or 4 days?
4 days. 4, inshallah.
would a person be sinning if they clip their nails or cut their hair before the slaughter? If they intend to slaughter?
Based off of that hadith, yes.
If you were to send her overseas, do they have to follow directly Salah because of the Muslim or
The safest thing to do, if you send your OD overseas, is to allow them to slaughter it on your time zone. So have them do it on the second day to be safe. No issue, no problem. Second day, class, yeah. Do it on the second day. Wallahu a'lam.
Finish?